Previously on my channel, I created a couple of videos talking about the different emerging horror projects that utilize nostalgia to scare the viewer. While many of these online projects may be considered a form of unfiction, many people have leaned towards the phrase of digital horror, an online subgenre known for exploring themes using the archetypes of the digital age of the internet as a medium to scare the viewer. First popularized following the creation of Petscop, digital horror has permeated the online landscape with its unconventional approach to contemporary horror. Digital horror isn't just about surface-level scares or eerie atmospheres. Its concepts and structures delve into much more profound themes, exploring the human psyche, societal constructs, and the bounds of creativity. It's within these stories that we find true horror, how fiction and reality begin to blur, pulling us into the unsettling truths, the duality of the human mind. Each of the projects within this video exemplifies the theory of the divided self, originally coined by psychiatrist and philosopher R.D. Laing. The theory states that many psychological disorders arise when there is a deep split between how a person experiences the world internally and how they express themselves externally. In recent years, it's been used to describe the dissonance one may feel in relation to their connection with reality. Each of these series covers this philosophical theory but in diverse ways. For example, AI Builds. The developer commentary slowly haunts our character with the effects of creative burnout, as well as the fear of plagiarizing others as an artist, making it appear that there is something more sinister hiding within these virtual walls. Summon House, an experimental game jam that slowly builds upon itself, creating a domino effect of audience interpretation. What originally appears to be a harmless game jam quickly devolves into a commentary on social awareness and time dissonance. Teeny Toys Exploration. After years of a beloved MMO's shutdown, a new channel is created to document the resurgence of this empty husk of a server. What begins as a nostalgic exploration of a forgotten world becomes a commentary on trauma, repression, and loss. BadWaterVideos2009. Gary's Mod has always been a lively game. However, BadWaterVideos takes this idea to a whole new level. Follow the creator of BadWaterVideos2009 as we discovered there's more to those empty husks called ragdolls than we know. Okay, pause. I was going to do a whole thing here, but then something recently came to my attention. The creator of AI Builds and Summon House recently had a bunch of allegations come out against him. This isn't like an expose or anything. I just wanted to make it known that while I don't condone the actions done by the creator, I believe the art he created still holds meaning. I just thought it was important to mention, so let's get back to the video. With these topics and themes in mind, we've got a lot to cover. So let's get started with AI Build. On October 26 of 2018, a channel was created called AI Builds. While you may be inclined to think of AI as artificial intelligence, in actuality, it stands for Animal Investigator. Clicking on the first video, we're given a multitude of questions that aren't exactly important to the game's mechanics. However, they give insight to our character. Are you male or female? Our player selects male. How old are you? With only 21 and 10 being available, our player selects 21. Keep this question in mind as we go throughout the series. Our player then skims through the next questions, selecting yes for enable access to webcam and microphone, enable access to computer files, and enable voice recognition. Our player is then revealed to be the developer of this anomalous game. The reason he's uploading these videos is to hold himself accountable for the development process.
So this is just to prove to you that I have not given up on developing this game.
As the developer opens the character select screen, two avatars are visible, a model named Nicholas and the other being Blue Stickman. Similarly to the how old are you question, we see two different interpretations of the same character's developmental state, one as a seasoned developer, and one as the minimalist interpretations of a child. Our developer chooses Nicholas, which is what we'll call him from now on. Once the game loads, Nicholas shows us the progress of his game.
Yeah, this is what the game looks like right now. It's nothing that special. It's been a very slow process, but I think by next week I'll probably have something more substantial.
The next video begins with Nicholas explaining the recent changes he's made. New clouds, a fence, a small house, and much more. Within the small house, we see different goals that Nicholas claims he hasn't finished yet, including an original character named Dr. Ant, a golden magnifying glass to use as some sort of currency for the game, and unbeknownst to the audience, a secret third page that, when analyzed, mentions a character named Mr. I they stalk at night. As Nicholas is running around the map, we see models for Dr. Ant, seemingly awaiting use, possibly for a cutscene Nicholas hadn't created yet. Nicholas then shows us the night mode for the game. He uses this opportunity to answer some questions regarding his creative decisions for the development of Animal Investigator. One of the questions mentions the obvious parallels to a game called Animal Police.
So, first question, why does this game look so much, or at least seem so much like Animal Police, which is a much older game? And the reason why is because I was a huge fan of that back when I was a kid.
An in-universe representation of Petscop, which has its own series on YouTube, parodying the archetypes that Petscop pioneered. Nicholas mentions that the series is heavily influenced by Animal Police, and that he's been getting some negative backlash due to the clear similarity. The next question he presents is the inclusion of Dr. Ant, or rather, the lack of such.
Aside from that, the other question was regarding why didn't I show the ant character. To answer that question is, I already said why I wasn't going to show that, because it doesn't exist yet.
Nicholas's answer is quite odd. He mentions that he hadn't even created the model for Dr. Ant yet, which is bizarre considering we had just seen the model during the morning mode. Either the game is adding models to itself, or Nicholas is unknowingly creating models. Either way, something ominous is clearly going on here, and I'm not too sure if Nicholas knows this yet. As Nicholas is about to end the video, we catch a glimpse of a large eye within the mountains. I believe it's safe to say that this is Mr. I, watching the small house. And if Nicholas hadn't created the model for Dr. Ant, it would be safe to assume that this eye entity is yet another anomaly. Nicholas ends the video disregarding this anomaly, as it appears mislaid and irrelevant. Whereas these past devlogs have been back-to-back uploads, this next video takes place a couple of days later. Nicholas begins his devlog by mentioning that he hadn't been getting much sleep since his last updates.
Sorry if I'm not all there right now, I'm just very sleep deprived. So this is the new...
The project has been taking up much of his time, despite the changes made to the game having been minimal at best. Nicholas explains the minor details he had added to the house. As he walks outside, he comes across another anomaly he hadn't made yet.
A little better now. What? How did that get here? That's strange. I didn't make you yet. See, I put it here.
He disregards the anomaly and begins to show the audience the subpar forest he'd created. To his surprise, however, one of the trees can be interacted with.
That tree, what? I can touch this tree. Do I want to click on it? Yeah, I want to click on it. Let's click on it. And
once interacting with the tree, a cutscene begins to play.
That's funny. That's funny. That's weird though. It's very weird. That's weird. It's a weird dream. I don't feel good. It's a funny feel.
After the cutscene is over, Nicholas collapses to the ground. This fever dream was clearly not made by Nicholas. The game appears to be adding items and models from Nicholas's mind, Dr. Ant, the golden magnifying glass, and Mr. I. Although it appears harmless as of now, the game begins to toy with his mental state, creating a clear connection between Nicholas's mind and the digital world. After this ordeal, another video is posted showing the genuine gameplay from this cutscene. It was merely a hallucination from within Nicholas's mind. Picking back up from the last video, something appears to take control of Nicholas's gameplay.
Funny feel.
As the screen fizzles out, we're shown the inside of Nicholas's dream, as an entity begins to beckon him to wake up and work. This entity speaking is Mr. I, forcing Nicholas awake to work on the game. As Nicholas wakes up, he realizes that he's now playing with a new build that he didn't create, taking this bright and cheery atmosphere and twisting it into an empty, foggy wasteland. Nicholas begins to explore this new build, and he uses this opportunity to talk to the audience.
If you don't know, my brother Josh, kind of a dick. About last month, he actually made his own fake animal police game just to mock me. Did this whole impression of me and all that bullshit.
He mentions that his brother Josh originally created the Animal Police channel on YouTube to mock him, and he included characters like Mr. I, the same anomalies we've been seeing throughout these videos. Nicholas assumes that most of the additions to his gameplay are Josh attempting to scare his brother, using his deeply rooted childhood characters to get a response out of him. After a bit of banter, Nicholas comes across a house that is quite different from the ones we've been shown before. Atop the building is a large butterfly, with small butterflies surrounding the house. As we walk inside, we can hear a beautiful lullaby playing above a mobile within a crib, housing a small child.
What the fuck did you do? Trying to scare me, is that it? Not really working, not really scared.
He begins to insult Josh's feeble attempt at frightening himself, despite his emotion being clearly present with his wavering voice. He walks away from the house, and as he does so, Nicholas notices something in the distance and runs in the other direction, abruptly ending the video. Despite what Nicholas might believe, I don't think his brother is the cause of the anomalies within his devlogs. It appears to me that the game is forcing Nicholas to work on itself, possibly to bring these characters to life in a way. This Mr. I entity is forcing Nicholas to work on the game non-stop, which is causing him to be more unhappy with both himself and the game. It's also very possible that this Mr. I entity is some sort of manifestation of Nicholas himself, since we know Nicholas has been pushing himself to finish the models and constantly code to meet his absurdly high expectations. It's also possible that his hallucinations are seeping into the game, as we saw earlier with the newly added cutscene. Regardless of either theory, something clearly unnerving is going on here, so we should do a little more investigating. In build 006, we pick up shortly after the last video. Only a day has passed since then. Before we even begin the video, we can see that the game has updated itself since the last time we saw it. Nicholas begins mentioning that he had a breakdown since the last video.
I had a bit of a breakdown. So you guys saw the video. This has been haunting me for a while now. I don't think Josh added that stuff that you saw.
He knows that his brother isn't causing the changes to occur, but he's terrified of what is. Nicholas clearly has been affected by the anomalies within the game, and it isn't random either. Mr. I, the butterflies, and the mobile within the house. This whole game is very personal to Nicholas, but we're only just seeing now how personal it truly is. Nicholas trudges forward. He discovers a computer within the house, along with a magnifying glass under lock and key. He can't inspect anything without his magnifying glass. Nicholas begins to explore the landscape, being overly critical of himself during the process.
My amazing mountains. Took me so long to make these mountains, let me tell you.
After walking around for a couple minutes, Nicholas finds Mr. I scouring the environment, looking for Nicholas. In an effort to avoid Mr. I, Nicholas begins to hide in the mountains, where he finds another character, aptly named Mountain Face. Nicholas expresses a deep fear for this character. He then notices a small enclosed area, and begins to explore while keeping away from Mr. I's glare. He finds a small page on the ground, and while most of it isn't very legible, it mostly mentions Mr. I being an odd entity. Quickly moving forward, Nicholas makes his way on top of the structure, finding a golden key. He then takes the magnifying glass and uses it on the computer, opening the select screen. Doing so, we can see different selectable moments. The only one that Nicholas seems to recognize is the one labeled Animal Investigator. He then clicks the prompt, which shows an overly harsh critic that goes by the name of Nighttime Seminar, voiced by the very real Nightmare Masterclass.
Hello, and welcome to Nighttime Seminar. My name is Davis Stockwell. I'll be your presenter on this expedition into the shadowy abyss. This is part 72 of my Animal Investigation series. In this installment, I'll be going over the 5 latest videos, builds 0.02 through 0.05, of course. Now, I know Animal Investigator has received a fair amount of criticism for being, well, there's no polite way to put this. It's completely derivative of the critically acclaimed video game Animal Police. In fact, there seems to be a ubiquitous sentiment amongst players and critics alike that Animal Investigator is a cheap ripoff of Animal Police. And that's a sentiment I share as well. I mean, it has all of the same elements. The golden key, the magnifying glass, and even the fence. It's all there, folks. And, well, here's the situation. You know when you accidentally purchase the generic version of the cereal you like, and it just doesn't taste quite as good? That's basically what Animal Investigator is. See, it only makes sense that when a masterful game like Animal Police comes out, a myriad of cheap imitators looking to make a quick buck quickly follow.
Why can't you people just fucking leave me alone?
After repeatedly slamming his desk, he catches the attention of Mr. I. However, despite the frightening rhetoric surrounding his character, he presents himself almost as a comforting friend, a shoulder to cry on. Build 07 is presented in the form of 3 separate entries: Wake Up Sleepyhead, Memories, and Dreams. Based on the first couple seconds of the build, it's obvious that Nicholas isn't uploading this anymore. Mr. I seemingly has control over the YouTube channel, posting the innermost thoughts of Nicholas. The first video presents us with a 3D representation of the room Nicholas lives in. Mr. I begins to beg Nicholas to let him through the door. Mr. I also mentions to Nicholas that he couldn't live without him, even if he tried. The next video, Memories, depicts Mr. I coercing Nicholas into opening the door by showing their past. He shows the original drawings for the different characters seen throughout the series. All these characters are childhood creations, which explains the rudimentary names given to each character. They were formed in the mind of a child. Despite the heartfelt, although rather disturbing message Mr. I is trying to convey, this immediately changes as we're thrusted into the abusive situation from Nicholas's point of view.
I know I haven't been a good friend, and I know that I hurt you many times, but that does not give you the fucking right to kick me out after how long I've been with you, so you better open the fucking door and let me in. Now, let me in,
The The next video is yet another attempt at Mr. I trying to force Nicholas to open the door. However, this attempt is slightly different from the previous. Mr. I begins to manifest the dreams of Nicholas within the game, presenting them to the audience, while berating him in the process. Within his psyche is a woman with a butterfly-shaped head, and as she continues to appear, we find out that this character is the internal representation of Nicholas's mother. We're then taken directly inside Nicholas's dream. He picks up a phone, as Mr. I begins to disguise his voice to be someone else, asking him to open the door, telling Nicholas that his mother will be home soon, successfully tricking Nicholas into opening the door. Opening the door could mean a couple of different things. The number one thing that comes to mind is Nicholas opening the door to a real-life manifestation of Mr. I. He's no longer contained within the confines of a digital machine. And while I do think this is true to some extent, I believe it's more representative of Mr. I accessing the inner psyche of Nicholas, possibly to the point of physical possession, not as a ghost, but as a depiction of his innermost thoughts and feelings. Moving forward, we're shown Build 08, which begins with Nicholas walking through an empty field. While walking through, Nicholas expresses the trauma he's endured from his perspective, expressing how he truly feels.
Can I just talk to you guys? I'm so fucking done with this just nonsense. I don't think you guys understand how much this takes out of me as a person. What the fuck am I getting out of this, you know? How am I expected to make a fucking game if I can just barely get out of bed each day? Especially with all you fuckers telling me over and over that I'm not adding anything to the table. That this game is not even mine at this point. You guys want to see more of me in the game. You want to see more of me in the game. More of my vision. I don't have a vision. I don't have a voice. I don't have anything. I haven't had a vision since I was like a fucking kid. And all that's gone now. If you're wondering where everything is now, I deleted everything. Because the more I just added stuff, the more I tried to bring my vision out there, the more I just wanted to kill myself. The more depressed I got. I can't fucking do this anymore.
Nicholas opens a pill bottle and takes one. Shortly after, a door appears for Nicholas. He doesn't seem to want to open the door, but against his better judgment, he walks through, taking him to a hallway. The first door is labeled Face Paint, with the mountain face character from earlier peering into the eyes of the viewer. Moving over to the easel, Nicholas stares at the blank canvas for a moment, as a childhood picture of mountain face appears on it. It soon disappears, replacing it with a green and white pill.
What? What the fuck? No. No. What the fuck? What the fuck?
From this scene, it appears to me that this game is doing much more than just projecting Nicholas's psyche into the game. It appears to have physical effects as well. Nicholas is clearly terrified of what's inside these doors and doesn't know whether he can keep going. Despite this, he still opens the next door. Once Nicholas walks through the door, he's transported to a forest. The label of this door reading, Dr. Ant's Tea Party. Taking the form of a point-and-click style adventure, Nicholas must find Dr. Ant to enjoy his cup of tea. Nicholas follows the arrows, unable to turn back. As he continues, the world becomes a darker shade of red. The video ends with Nicholas reaching a dead end. In the next video, we pick up in the same forest as the last video. However, the environment is desolate, and there's more detail in the texturing than there was in the last video. It's quite possible that the game is still updating, despite Nicholas wanting to cease this project entirely. Nicholas begins to move forward, and as he does so, a mysterious entity begins to speak to him, using white text. You can be happy. You can find ways to feel much better. Follow the path that helps you remember. He comes to a fork in the road. Choosing the path on his right, Nicholas finds a tunnel shaped similarly to a pill bottle. The game freezes for a moment, and the structure abruptly gets close to us. You've helped paint the bigger picture. I'm starting to see everything. You do have a vision. You do have a voice. You just need to feel good. Feeling good makes you work. Feeling bad makes you hurt. I just wish you'd let me in more often. I think we'd have a lot of fun. Away from the bad. Away from the hurt. Let me in, Nicholas. Can't let you face this tunnel head on, but you have to try to reverse it. Just learn to not overdo it. Don't end up like he did. Get help. Please. You are strong. We are strong. Nicholas is forced to walk through the tunnel, against everything he stands for. The following cutscene shows Nicholas going through the tunnel. However, we go in through the opposite way, and as we do so, the world changes to be more vibrant.
I mean, I don't know. I just suddenly feel very inspired. I feel very, open. Oh, guys, I think we're getting close. There he is. There's our guy. Talk to me. Go ahead.
I'm so glad you made it to my tea party.
From what we just saw, it's clear that Nicholas's judgment is clouded. He's clearly being manipulated by Mr. I, both physically and psychologically. But why? To what end? Let's find out more. The next video shows Nicholas walking through another door, into a room with a television and a desk, with a poster above it that reads Perfect Child Programming. He clicks on a page that's on the desk. My cheeks burn red from silly lies, red like the color of my bloodshot eyes. I beg for more, yet long in time. No life is normal by wanting mine. I search and I search, but to no success, despite ticking every box and pursuing each test. Yet here I lie in bed with bloodshot eyes, lonely, scared despite my many tries. Nicholas then picks up the figurine on the desk. It tells us to press X for a catchphrase.
That's funny. Hey guys, so this is just to prove to you
No.
that I wasn't. Why do I keep opening doors? Why can't you people just freaking leave me alone?
What in the fuck?
The figurine is mocking Nicholas, using words and phrases previously spoken by Nicholas within the video. Moving forward towards the sofa, Nicholas begins to watch the TV as a show begins to play, presumably the same show from the Perfect Child Programming poster we saw earlier, presented by Mr. I, of course.
I wake up, then I go to bed. I wake up, then I go to bed. I wake up, then I go to bed. Wait, there's things that I still haven't said. I wake up and go outside and thank the Lord that I'm alive. Then I'll just go sing my happy song.
The show presents us with three characters: Tim, the arrogant leader; Drew, the submissive lackey; The episode begins by Drew showing Tim his drawing, and Tim mentions that the drawing is clearly derivative of his own. Tim begins to mention that Drew needs help with his drawing. So, they need to go see Mountain Face. Once they're at the mountains, they wander for a bit and find a magnifying glass in a fence from the original build. Drew lashes out as Tim begins to slowly phase into the ground. The footage cuts to a grave as the characters begin to act strangely.
Do you remember Nicholas?
What?
No. Who's Nicholas?
You don't remember?
No. Who's Nicholas? Who is
He
he?
killed himself. Yeah, he killed himself. Took too many pills. We buried him here. Didn't give him a gravestone, though. He didn't deserve it. Because he was a coward. I don't want you to end up like he did, Drew. So stay away from pills. Stay away from anything that can hurt you. 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 Please.
What?
Don't end up like he did.
After the whole ordeal, Mr. I begins to talk to us directly, or rather, to Nicholas. Thanks for watching. It's so fun to share my work, especially with someone like you. You're special. We are special. I'm here for you, always. I'm in the house. I love to pick your brain. You should draw more. Those were good times. I love you so much. I got my eye on you. Too obvious? You would have made Dad proud. Just remember to stay safe. Nicholas leaves the room, regretting his choices along the way. The next video opens with a new title screen, Introvert Island. Nicholas begins to walk across a bridge onto a relatively calm beach island. Once on the island itself, the bridge disappears almost instantly. A countdown begins, and afterwards, Nicholas can't speak.
What? What is it counting down to,
His voice was taken by Mr. I. After a moment of wandering, Nicholas notices a butterfly. The same poorly textured butterfly from Build 05. He rushes to catch it, finding a small overturned crib, playing that same melody from the house. After peering at the crib for a bit, the butterfly soars too far out of reach, possibly symbolizing that childlike happiness Nicholas once had, chasing it, but never reaching that destination. Nicholas wanders a bit farther and finds a chair with the same green and white colors from the pill we saw earlier. Against his better judgment, Nicholas sits in the chair. Nicholas then comes across a hand in the water, begging for help. Despite Nicholas doing everything he can to help the guy, he drowns. To find a way off the island, Nicholas comes across a building with different buttons attributed to the different drawings Nicholas had created in his childhood.
Hey, it's me. You've helped paint the bigger picture. These pictures you drew for me were so foggy, so confusing, so jumbled and nonsensical. The more I've spent time with you, the more I get it. You can stop blaming yourself. You can stop hating yourself. You can stop all of this. It was scary when you found out what happened to him. The idea that there was no life in him anymore. You were scared, you were horrified that you'll never speak to him again. It's really hard to make things when it feels like everything's been done before. I know how it feels. That lonely, awful feeling that everything's been done already and you can't add anything to the table. That you'll just be laughed at, scoffed at. But then when I'm ready to take my life, I remember that there are people that do care about me, but I never understand why they do. I try to comprehend it, but I can't. I need to find something good about myself.
Mr. I then confronts Nicholas, berating him, torturing him, doing whatever he can to take control and manipulate the situation in his favor.
You're nothing. I hate you. I hate you. Your dad hated you. Everyone hates you. Everyone fucking hates you. Everyone fucking hates you.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you for everything! You don't give a fuck about me! You just take and just fucking steal everything from me! You've done nothing but take from me! I hate you! I fucking hate you!
The next video begins with a message to the YouTube audience, presumably from Mr. I. The sequence that follows is a sort of recap of what we've previously watched within the last couple episodes. However, around 4 minutes into the video, a new section is chosen. We're now showing the point of view of Nicholas, wandering through a deeply desaturated, desolate landscape. Nicholas tells the audience that he wants to try and get away from Mr. I's manipulation. He soon comes across a street post with the words, "Follow the leader," written on it. A silhouette of Mr. I can be seen for a moment. Nicholas runs away in fear. Within the distance, Nicholas finds a house. He runs toward it, shutting the door before Mr. I can reach him. Nicholas hides in the corner while Mr. I uses the voice of his previous characters to coerce Nicholas into letting him inside once more. Mr. I begins to take extreme measures, using his arms to try and grab Nicholas within the game. He then begins to use these same manipulative tactics from previous builds, using the drawings and comics from his childhood to coerce him. We've experienced this once before, haven't we? Mr. I passes a piece of paper under the door, a comic that Nicholas made for his father. Within it, Nicholas asks his mother why his dad is acting weird. His mother tells him that his father is just trying to feel good. He keeps yelling. She answers, "I know." The next page shows a crying eye with the words, "I'm sorry. Stay in the room. Stop." Assuming the comic is still talking about his father, it appears that Nicholas had been a victim of either physical or emotional abuse. It's possible that Mr. I is mirroring the actions taken by his father. Despite Mr. I's efforts, Nicholas breaks the cycle of abuse, burning the paper and taking back his freedom.
This means nothing.
Despite what you might think, this isn't the end of the story. About a year after the last video was posted, an announcement was made on the community tab of the YouTube channel named Film Student Thoughts. So let's take a quick look at what might be in store for us.
The Elephant Man is my second favorite film after Cloverfield. Never have I seen a film that has just left me so emotionally drained. This movie does such a good job at showcasing the importance of empathy and the role that plays in society and how we treat the ugly people that make us uncomfortable. John Merrick, a man who in real life was stomped on by elephants, is portrayed incredibly profoundly well by the actor John Hurt. whose name is probably a reference to how John constantly gets hurt throughout this film due to his ugliness. Well, here's the difference between you and me. I'm a film student, and you're not. So I'm just more in tune with how a movie is made and what metaphors it makes. The first thing I'd like to talk about with The Elephant Man is the way this film plays with shadows. This film is so beautifully lit throughout, and you can really see the menacing use of lighting to really bring out the feeling of fear when the monster appears. Let me show you an example here. Truly terrifying.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. The channel is clearly a parody of the average film critic channel. Looking at the second video, it's about the movie Her. However, our uploader proceeds to tell us that his attempts to make friends haven't been successful. Furthermore, our uploader tries his best to get the attention of others by making short films of his college classmates, hoping they'd see him as a good friend. And as he's explaining all of this, our uploader takes a minute to discuss something much more personal.
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a quick break from the film analysis to show you some drawings that I made when I was a child. This one I called Mr. I. I drew him after feeling like people were watching me judgingly while I was walking to class one day. This one I called Mountain Face, which I didn't put my name on for some reason. I wish I could remember why. This one is Dr. Ant. I named him after my doctor who prescribes me medication. And this one is a beautiful butterfly, which reminds me of my childhood happiness. Interpreting these films feels like looking back on my old drawings. I feel like I'm close to cracking what the purpose was, but my mind won't let me reach the conclusions. And that's what Her is all about. Her continues to take everything away from me. Thanks for watching.
Our final video is different.
Hello everybody! Today I would like to talk about my favorite horror film of all time, Cloverfield. The reason I love Cloverfield so much is the big monster. Big monsters are really scary, and I found the monster really, really scary, and
Alright, so, what exactly is AI Builds trying to tell the audience? Nicholas, a seasoned developer, is struggling to use his creativity in a way that satisfies both himself and the demographic he's presenting his creations to. Both Nicholas and his audience become overly critical of the game. Most critics tell him that it's too derivative of a separate project that goes by the name of Animal Police, the in-universe representation of Petscop. This causes Nicholas to attribute his self-worth to his minimal output, expressing his depression and anxiety throughout the series. Through this expression, we can see different manifestations of his subconscious within the game. Let's quickly talk about them. Originally drawn as a way for Nicholas to voice his concerns over his anxiety, the character takes the form of Nicholas's most critical and degrading thoughts. He takes control of the game, and almost everything within it is under his command, adding content to the game unbeknownst to Nicholas, often mirroring the internal thoughts of himself. Anytime Mr. I is on screen, he either emotionally manipulates Nicholas or verbally abuses him. We know that Nicholas's father is somewhat abusive from what we saw, and that Mr. I likely adopted those same actions from his father. While I don't think that Mr. I is meant to be a stand-in for the father of Nicholas, I believe that he shares these same narcissistic manipulation tactics that we see from the father. It's also possible that Mr. I is the living embodiment of addiction. We see his presence thoroughly within AI Builds. And when Nicholas finds the strength to fully denounce Mr. I, his presence isn't completely void. He comes up again when we see film student thoughts. It's likely that this is meant to be a visualization of the effects of addiction. Whether it be an addiction to work or an addiction to medication, it's possible that's what we're seeing from Mr. I. However, I'll go more in depth about that in a minute. The meaning behind Dr. Ant's character is slightly more ambiguous than Mr. I. However, it's likely just face value. Nicholas originally drew the character to represent his psychiatrist. However, within the series, it's likely given a much more different meaning. Whenever Dr. Ant is on screen, Nicholas adopts this sudden delirium. It's likely that Dr. Ant represents the adverse effects of antidepressants or possibly stimulant-induced psychosis. Whatever the case is, Dr. Ant is probably less of a psychiatrist and more of a representation of the medical world. treating Nicholas with hospitality and giving him things to complete the goal of feeling good. Giving him that one cup of tea that will make him happy, will fulfill him. While you might be inclined to believe that Dr. Ant is some sort of inverse of Mr. I don't think that's the case. Mr. I represents everything Nicholas hates about himself. Dr. Ant represents everything to do with his interpretation of the medical world. So while Dr. Ant isn't necessarily one of the antagonists of the story, he isn't exactly working with Nicholas to completely better his mental health. Mountain Face was originally given to the audience with an obscure origin. Nicholas himself never wrote his name on the original drawing of Mountain Face. However, we can gather from the different aspects of the series that Mountain Face is likely the father of Nicholas. It's never explicitly stated, but it's heavily implied that Nicholas's father had committed suicide after overdosing on antidepressants, and Nicholas had discovered his father's dead body. We can see references to this in the PCP segment. Following the funeral for his father, it's likely that Nicholas had drawn Mountain Face to represent the dead, stone-like face of his father. It isn't some scary monster or spooky creature. It's a man's face, open-eyed and watching. The butterfly represents a couple of different things throughout the series, namely, the most prominent being the mother of Nicholas. It isn't clear whether or not the mother is still alive. Regardless, Nicholas finds his mother to be a source of happiness and love, likely meaning they had a very loving relationship. The butterfly also likely represents the childlike happiness that we all felt at one point or another. In the case of Nicholas, he felt as if he'd never be able to feel happy again. This thought causes him to feel more and more depressed. The green and white pills are also left purposely ambiguous. Despite this, they're likely the most influential aspect of the story, appearing in the clouds and on the lounge chair in Introvert Island. I've gathered a couple of different theories regarding the pills, however, they don't exactly answer every question throughout the series. The first theory would be that the green and white pills are dexmethylphenidate, a stimulant used to treat the symptoms of ADHD. Dexmethylphenidate is often used by writers and artists to increase the output of their work. In this interpretation, Nicholas was likely using the pills to further the development of this game. However, abusing this kind of stimulant can lead to medically induced psychosis, causing hallucinations, confusion, delirium, similar to the effects of schizophrenia. This would explain the odd moments when Nicholas was able to interact with the tree, which began a cutscene, but in reality, there was nothing there, because the entire thing was a hallucination brought on by the overdose of dexmethylphenidate. However, this doesn't exactly explain Mr. I's antagonism towards these pills. He constantly manipulates Nicholas into staying away from them. We know that Mr. I wants Nicholas to be miserable, and taking away these pills are making him feel that way. So why would he want Nicholas to stop? This leads me to a second interpretation of the story. These pills are an antidepressant named fluoxetine hydrochloride, used to treat depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Nicholas was prescribed fluoxetine in order to treat his depression. However, in an attempt to feel good like his father once felt he had to, he begins to abuse his medication. At times, he begins to hallucinate due to a possible overdose. Mr. I manipulates Nicholas in order to force the medication out of him, and at some points, he does this by physically manipulating his body in order to regurgitate the fluoxetine. As for emotional manipulation, Mr. I uses the death of Nicholas's father to scare him from taking antidepressants. Towards the end of the channel's videos, we see Nicholas denounce Mr. I, as well as his addiction possibly changing for the better. Unfortunately, we see the return of Mr. I on Nicholas's new channel, Film Student Thoughts, likely meaning that he's relapsed as the cycle continues. The symbolism throughout the series can be seen as early as the first couple minutes of the project. The question first asked in Build 02, when the game asks Nicholas whether he is 21 or 10. Similarly, our character chooses the more defined character model rather than the simplistic blue stick man, showing the audience the difference in creativity from adulthood to childhood. This choice could also reflect the mental age regression we see Nicholas go through numerous times throughout the series, especially when we see his mother appear on screen. Moreover, we can see the character model chosen by Nicholas is a symbol of his own personal creativity. Just like his work, he has no arms or legs to stand on. There's nothing but a husk inspired by a project much more creative than his own. In my viewing of the story, I found it to be very similar to Death of a Salesman, where in that story, we find a man who's become suicidal and depressed because of the state of his work life. The output of his work has been non-existent ever since he'd been employed at the company, and because of that, he's attributed that output to his self-worth, causing the view of himself to become more resentful. It's a similar idea to what we're seeing in AI builds. A developer becomes more and more depressed due to the minimal additions to his game. It was almost non-existent at times. Now that we've discussed what most of the series makes up, how exactly does this fit into R.D. Lang's divided self? Well, there's the obvious case in which Nicholas is presenting himself as a seasoned developer with multiple creative decisions he wishes to add to the game, but in reality he doesn't have a vision for the game at all, and is actually using inspiration as an excuse to plagiarize Animal Police. But I think we can do better than that. Nicholas himself is divided into multiple characters throughout the series. Mr. I, the personification of the dark and shadowed introspection of Nicholas, while also being the embodiment of the narcissistic manipulation his father treated him with. He uses his deep and most dismal thoughts Nicholas has about himself in order to exploit his actions, both mentally and physically. Dr. Ant, the manifestation of the medical world from his perspective of Nicholas. Dr. Ant represents the thoughts and feelings Nicholas has once he uses or abuses his medication. The butterfly is the childhood happiness Nicholas once had, of which he's unable to grasp. You get the idea. Nicholas is a broken and flawed character. His human psyche is shattered into pieces we can see in the form of multiple characters. And in the end, it took a lot to find that freedom that we all hope for. AI Builds uses the division of Nicholas's mind in order to tell a story of depression, suicide, and psychosis, exemplifying exactly the theory of the divided self. AI Builds is a beautiful yet terrifying rendition of the concerning societal concept of output equating to self-worth. Both the portrayal of the protagonist Nicholas and the antagonist Mr. I are absolutely heart-wrenching, horrific, alluring, and absolutely astonishing. AI Builds tackles the topics of suicidal thoughts, addiction, depression, creative burnout, as well as the fear of copying others. It's an intense series that has completely lived up to its artistic potential and then some. The dichotomy between Nicholas and Mr. I is some of the most profound pieces of digital media that I've had the honor of watching. It's tense at times and melancholic at others. It's as if we're truly peering into the subconscious of a broken mind. The portrayal of delineation of mental health within this series is absolutely wonderful. It's tastefully done without compromising morals or integrity. I'm really proud of the incredible work put into this series. Where AI Builds excels in letting the audience interpret the story for themselves, this next series utilizes that same concept and uses it against the viewer. On June 18th of 2021, a mysterious channel was created, seemingly for an anomalous game called Summon House. I don't have an explanation for how the game works. I only have access to the videos I can only see. They appear and disappear on YouTube, so I download them quick and upload. This has started happening more this year, 2024. Thank you for your patience. With this in mind, let's watch the first video, Summon House.
Hello everybody, welcome back.
Our main character isn't given a name, however, a name is provided in the description, Alistar. Our character begins by telling the audience, welcome back, likely meaning that this is from an already established YouTube channel. Throughout the beginning of the episode, Alistar is extremely critical of the game, likely an act for the audience.
Oh my god, it's so bad. Oh my god, this doesn't look finished at all.
After loading into the game, Alistar begins to explore the house, first analyzing the window, next towards the shelf, then the painting next to the shelf, and finally he tries to explore the door in the room, but it's blocked off. Our player then attempts to go to sleep, and is prompted with the words, "What summon?" He types in apple, and the video ends. In the description of the YouTube video, there's a short analysis of what happened in the video. House was ridiculed when he entered, explored thoroughly, summoned apple. Clearly, there is someone documenting their findings when it comes to this elusive game. It isn't clear what this game can really do, but in order to find out, we need to keep watching. Summon House 2 picks up right where we left off in the last video. Our character wakes up and begins to explore once again. However, as Alistar inspects the window once more, laughter can be heard from the other room. The room that was previously blocked off is now available for exploration. Despite the new addition to the game, Alistar seems to be taken aback somehow by the addition of a kitchen. Our character walks over to the apple he had summoned earlier, seemingly baffled by its inclusion. As our player walks back into the bedroom, we see an apple within the painting, creating more confusion for the player. He reckons it's likely just something that the game had pre-programmed. So in order to try and outsmart the system, he inputs something more specific: water bottle. The video promptly concludes, as a description reads similar to the last video. Alistar, light turned on by itself, explored thoroughly, canvas filled in. So we know this game is adding on to itself by collecting player input. It's possible that this could be the work of some sort of artificial intelligence using the player's past experiences to build on the game. Unfortunately, it's still too soon to say what could be going on here. Similarly to Summon House 1 and 2, Summon House 3 picks up exactly where we left off. Alistar is becoming more and more afraid of what this game has in store for him. Some new changes we can notice off the bat is the detail added to the floor, another being the dialogue changes. They seem to reference the apple summon more and more often now. Alistar begins to explore the house, finding another room to enter. Within it is a broken light, with a table, and on the floor is an empty water bottle. This room seems to frighten Alistar, and as he's inspecting the water bottle, a strange entity runs behind him, and as he chases it, the entity disappears. As Alistar begins to mention the elusive nature of the painting, it changes before him. Rather than a blank canvas, it provides a painting of an apple surrounded by water. Alistar begins to summon doors. He wants to use them in order to protect himself from the entity. Once again, the video abruptly ends, as the description reads, Alistar, encountered creature, explored thoroughly, canvas filled in. As Alistar began to progress through the summon house, the game uses his summons to increase its knowledge about the different aspects of their summons. The kitchen for the apple, the extra room for the water bottle, the painting combining both as a form of expression. It's learning as the player progresses. And then there's the topic of the entity we saw, that creature as the uploader puts it. As of right now, there isn't a lot to go off of. However, from what I can tell, it's likely a personification of the house itself. Regardless, let's keep watching. Summon House 4 diverges slightly from the normal Summon House we've been getting used to. It appears we're shown a new character who goes unnamed. Not even 30 seconds into the video and we can see that this character is even more critical than Alistar was.
So far the game hasn't even started yet and it already feels like 12-ounce mouse. Oh, purple. Purple everywhere. Outside star. Are we in space?
The layout of the house is also different, but not so much that it would raise questions. There's still a window, there's still a shelf, there's a light, a bed, a blocked off door. Everything is still in its place. It's just slightly off. After exploring the house, our character is given a prompt: what to summon. He inputs dog and the video ends. The next video is unlike anything we've seen from this series. It's an outside perspective of the Summon House videos being posted on YouTube. However, this isn't our uploader. This is a different person entirely. Unfortunately, the video is in French and I don't speak French. Luckily, someone in the comment section has provided us with a full translation of the video. We will be using it here. Horror is sometimes found in simplicity. An evening like any other, you pull up your laptop and you look for a new video game to try out. You find a strange minimalist project. It catches your attention even if you don't know what it's about. Curiosity strikes and now you're transported within four walls, a prison of imagination. The game lets you materialize what you write, seemingly like magic. You feel like the game understands you, that you are in control of the environment, or at least you think you are. Would you keep playing? Welcome again on my channel. Tonight I present to you a hidden gem of digital horror. Sit down and relax, with some popcorn and drinks. Prepare yourself for infinite possibilities.
Hey guys, oh, what the fuck? Hey guys, so I'm gonna be trying out this game I just found on a game jam.
We're once again greeted with a familiar voice, Alistar. He seems to be replaying Summon House as if he'd never played it before. Other than that, the house is similar except for this. There is something outside of the Summon House. Two distinctly different areas from this one. One of these houses is a visibly dark purple. After thoroughly exploring the house, Alistar gets a phone call.
Oh, my phone. Hold on, sorry. One sec. Pizza Hut, then like half cheese, half boar. Yeah.
Which isn't very interesting in and of itself, but his ringtone is specifically notable. Supposedly, this is Last Friday Night by Katy Perry, but clearly listening to the song is not Last Friday Night. Alistar begins to interact with the bed like what we've seen previously, but instead of asking for what he should summon, it just says what in all caps. Alistar inputs pizza. The second video within the episode involves Alistar picking back up where we left off. A door has opened for him. He explores the kitchen that's been added, as well as checking out the pizza that he'd summoned. The interaction text for the pizza mirrors what Alistar had spoken about on the phone. After this strange interaction, Alistar hears a voice call out to him.
Can you summon a dog? Can you summon a dog? Please? Go to the bed and summon a dog. Please?
Alistar moves towards the bed, however he leaves before we can see him summon anything. The video promptly ends. Let's talk about what just happened. We're seeing Alistar react to the game for the second time, however he's acting as if it's his first. Actually, scratch that, I think that this is his first time reacting to this game. You see, I believe there's some sort of time manipulation being thrown around here. Supposedly, the French narrator tells us that this is Last Friday Night by Katy Perry, although cross-referencing the lyrics to Last Friday Night, or any song for that matter, brings up no results. This song does not exist. I'm beginning to think that this Alistar is a different Alistar from what we've seen previously. It's also possible that the ambiguously dark building outside of our summon house is the other Alistar's summon house. If this is all true, then that would mean that this elusive game jam is an elaborate cross-dimensional anomaly. Unlike the previous entries, this episode consists of a direct confrontation between the audience and the genuine uploader of the videos on the channel. Most of this video is a collection of findings by the Summon House uploader. A video will be uploaded on YouTube, when it will be promptly deleted from not only the website but also from our universe, specifically mentioning the Katy Perry moment from episode 5. For the most part, Summon House 6 is mostly just a recap of what we know so far. Summon House 7 is a continuation of what we saw in Summon House 4. It begins to explore his surroundings, finding a pathway within the previously blocked door. This mysterious looking room holds a dog bed, but no dog. Our character soon meets what he's looking for.
I think I hear it. Hear what?
Can you summon me now? I can't wait to play with you, new friend. I'm a dog. My name's Dog.
You fucking kidding me? What the fuck was that?
The hilarity of this interaction aside, it's clear that whatever is summoning these entities within the game has no real interpretation of what a dog is. An odd dream-like sequence follows after the dog adopts our character as his newfound friend. Our character then is seen hiding under the bed, with the dog screaming for our character to play with him, as well as the text, "Don't let me fall asleep." This is unlike anything we've seen from the previous gameplay. Its divergence from the normality of Summon House is terrifying in its own right, and it seems our character agrees. The game prompts our character to summon something, in which the game forces him to input Doghouse. Summon House 8 isn't exactly about Summon House directly, but more so about Alistar and his YouTube channel. It appears that Alistar and his friend Sylvain are YouTubers from the early 2010s. They upload to the channel Tubular Times. The documentary is presented by Scare Daily. The video itself is about the Frozen Phantom, supposedly a sort of creepypasta within this timeline. We soon find out that Alistar was informed about the entity by a post on Know Your Meme. Most of their journey to the tunnel is extremely arbitrary, aside from someone seemingly following our characters, possibly the entity they're searching for. They soon find themselves inches away from the tunnel. Sylvain is somewhat frightened while Alistar is unassuming. Just before they're about to leave, the entity appears walking towards them.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
THC. I'm gonna give you some THC, my player.
What the fuck are you? I think
I got the double you got. I got the W key.
So the frozen phantom is just a homeless person.
It's just a homeless guy.
I am not homeless. Here's some fentanyl-laced cereal milk and some Broward County Tic Tacs.
Thank you.
The silliness of this interaction aside, those words clearly didn't exist in 2009. Soon after Alistar and Sylvain take a hit from whatever this homeless man was smoking, Sylvain is seen collapsed on the ground, possibly dead, as the homeless man disappears, and so does Sylvain, playing the same sound cue from Summon House 5. Honestly, this video leaves more questions than answers when it comes to the overall narrative of Summon House. It more or less throws a wrench into the idea we originally had, and based on the description of the uploader, he doesn't have a clue either. Summon House 9 begins by showing us a recap of what's previously shown on the channel. However, it slowly introduces new commentaries given by people we have yet to see within the series. In fact, these commentaries are by real people. You can even watch some of these videos yourself. Within Summon House 9 is another uploader commentary, given to us by Mr. Red Gloves. He wishes to present us with a different sort of commentary than the usual upload. Mr. Red Gloves presents us with an outside perspective of the series from a YouTuber called The Ketchup Ninja. Ketchup Ninja tells his audience his views on the series, telling them that this web series is subpar in quality. Mr. Red Gloves uses this interpretation of his 6th video to better format his production. With all of this aside, he tells us that he's made a couple of discoveries. Firstly, he mentions that he sees Summon House as a paperclip. In his own words, something that feels structured at first, but as long as you can transform it and bend it to your will, you can turn it into something completely different. Next, our narrator tells us that he has tracked down where the tunnel from the Frozen Phantom episode was. After stopping to watch the fireworks at a local fair, he makes his way toward a nature park. As he's walking toward the tunnel, our narrator comes across a random individual. He asks about the Frozen Phantom in an almost manic frenzy. Our narrator begins to warn us that what happens next isn't for the faint of heart. I'll let you guys take a look.
What the hell? What the fuck? I guess they summoned a glass of alcohol.
The narrator begins to tell the audience that a picture was taken of him by the random individual we met earlier. However, the body that we saw is nowhere to be seen within the photograph, showing the insanity of this situation. He ends the video promising more to come from this anomalous channel. If you're confused about what you just watched, I don't blame you. It's a confusing yet intriguing story about the philosophy of interpretation, as well as a meta-analysis of the ARG and video essay genre as a whole. First off, let's try and explain what's going on within this irregularity of a YouTube channel. We follow a character whose name is currently unknown, but the character mainly goes by the name of Mr. Red Gloves. He finds YouTube videos of a peculiar game that seemingly has cross-dimensional abilities. The Summon House game uses human interaction in order to further the development of itself. Similarly to generative AI of today, no one within our dimension has access to this Summon House game. This includes Mr. Red Gloves as well. Alistar, the pseudo-protagonist of the series, is an established YouTuber in most timelines. In the first timeline, Summon House 1 through 3, we see Alistar go through the game with a terrified demeanor. A second version of this character is presented within Summon House 5. Unlike the Alistar from Summon House 1 through 3, this Alistar quickly rejects the idea of continuing the Let's Play, and removes himself from the idea entirely. We then meet yet another unnamed character within a purple Summon House. He summons the dog entity, and afterwards we never hear from him again. It's my belief that the Summon House game is a nexus point in time, connecting different realities, timelines, and dimensions. This is evident by the inclusion of 2 different Alistars, as well as the idea that this Mr. Red Gloves character is the Alistar of our dimension. Having Mr. Red Gloves be an alternate Alistar could explain why he's so obsessed with the Summon House videos. It would also explain why they share the same glove type across dimensions, and why he feels the need to hide his voice behind a filter. If we think about the Summon House as a point in between time, that could also lead the idea that the videos we watch are not in chronological order, and are actually dispersed on YouTube throughout different times. As for the 8th video regarding this series, this is where things can get a bit confusing. Sylvain and Alistar begin to discover an anomaly within their timeline. the Nature Park Bridge. Under it is where the Frozen Phantom resides, and although we know almost nothing about this character, we know that Sylvain and Alistar meet with the Frozen Phantom. The Frozen Phantom begins to use slang that hadn't been coined for around 17 years, and after they officially meet, the Phantom and Sylvain both disappear almost instantly, leaving Alistar all alone. We then see this version of the Nature Park Bridge within our timeline when Mr. Red Gloves visits the anomaly. When he does so, we see a version of himself with a broken bottle, as well as yellow gloves. It's possible that this Nature Park Bridge is another nexus point in between time, using the tunnel as a literal wormhole through reality. For now, there's a lot of unanswered questions regarding this series, and it's possible that there's more to come. It's my belief that Summon House was created to show the different interpretations people have about art. The second-rate nature of the game is pointed out to the audience, not just by the viewers of the series, but also by the players themselves within the series. I believe it's meant to show what art is originally taken as at face value, rather than what it can be given a proper interpretation. Moving over to the divide itself, while there isn't a clear string of mental health issues being presented here, I think it's more literal. Alistar is being divided across multiple timelines and dimensions. Within the divide itself, there's also the idea of sentience and what makes a character sentient. I believe that's also what we're seeing here. Similarly, we see throughout the series the different ways that people interact with the actual game aspect of Summon House, dividing that game into branching paths, each summon causing a different timeline, a dissonance in time itself. Summon House has presented the audience with philosophical questions throughout the series, using the interpretations of art as a way to tell an interesting story. In our next series, we'll dive deep within the subconscious of a broken mind, through the medium of a forgotten MMO. On November 14th of 2021, a channel was created with the intent of exploring a strange MMO in order to find the purpose behind it. The mysterious nature of this description aside, the first episode seems to be rather tame. Within this video, we meet a young man named Diego. He mentions that he created this channel to document the resurgence of the Teeny Toys servers. He also mentions that Teeny Toys was released in the early 2000s and that a couple years afterwards, the servers were closed down for seemingly no reason. After inputting his old email and password, we're greeted with the character select screen that many older MMOs had in the past. We see that Diego has a character already saved from when he played as a child. However, for this playthrough, he decides to create a new character. After creating a somewhat iconic design, Diego then needs to answer questions in order to finish the character process. This is a common characteristic of many MMOs during the early 2000s. The questions themselves are relatively simple. However, the answers tell us more about Diego than he might be letting on. The answers to what do you do in your free time, with the choices being eat, go outside, watch TV, or play video games. Diego chooses play video games, seemingly unnerved by his own answer. Similarly, for the question, would you like to play by yourself or with a group? Diego chooses by yourself, further reiterating this loneliness that we might see throughout the series. Moving forward, Diego chooses a name for his character, settling with the name Noisy Beep Boop, mainly because the buttons refuse to work correctly. After waiting for a moment, we see a large teddy bear, along with an ambiguously creepy painting above him. The bear provides us with a general idea of what to do around here. Play games with other players. Playing games provides you with a currency that you can use to buy cosmetics. Leaving the room, Diego notices the emptiness of the server and ends the video. The next episode consists of Diego exploring the new room. After realizing the obvious loneliness of his situation, Diego figures he needs to play more minigames in order to find other players, almost as if this would be the tutorial stage. After Diego finds a minigame machine, he begins to play a game of memory, an interesting choice considering the context. After playing a couple games, Diego notices he's still the only player within the game. After he finishes up with a machine, Diego moves on to a different minigame, this one being slightly more difficult. After completing a couple games, Diego wishes to explore the ramp in the middle of the map, finding two other minigame machines. However, he can't seem to play either of them, ending the video with a disappointing tone in his voice. Diego seems to have been playing a lot more on his own, clearly shown by his currency counter. He mentions that he had to repeatedly play the same minigame for hours, which is worrying, but regardless, he quickly moves on from the statement. After walking through a large green door, he ended up in the room with a character inside that seemingly sells items or upgrades of some kind. Despite Diego being one of the original players before the game shut down, he notes that the store is unlike anything he's seen before. The store itself only sells about 5 items, a small and large honey pot, as well as a small and large metal bottle of some kind. However, when Diego scrolls farther down, he notices a key that's being sold for 100,000 credits. It isn't stated, but I'm heavily inclined to believe that the hole in the key is a letter, specifically the letter D. Diego realizes that this is the key linked to opening the pink door. Instead of boring the audience with more minigames, he decides to buy the large honey pot now, unsure of its purpose. Diego shows the audience the settings book in the corner. He finds out that the honey pot from earlier is called a mega increase, utilized for when our player becomes exhausted. Strange wording for a game revolved around robots. Diego explores the rest of the tabs within the book and ends the video. The next entry into the series opens on a short story for children that appeared when he opened the game. However, it appears to be in Italian, despite the game not having any Italian ties. Diego has translated the story in the description, along with his thoughts on the matter. The story boils down to a young bear who becomes sick with a debilitating disease. His parents take him to a doctor, or a sage, if you will. That sage recommends taking him to the Great Bear, and once they do, they realize that he must be made into part machine. The part that mainly sticks out to me is when they say, "Your son will stay a lion only in his brain. His body will not be made of flesh and bones anymore." The story might not make much sense right now, but as we go throughout the series, you'll realize its importance. Diego then buys the pink key and begins to make his way over to the pink door. He discovers a pink minigame machine, as well as another hole in the wall he can explore. Diego notes that despite moving on from the lobby area, there are no players in this new room. Diego walks toward the hole in the wall, and he's greeted by a smaller pink door near the microwave. After walking through the door, Diego finds yet another shop. However, there's no keys to be found here. After that disappointing adventure, Diego begins to play the minigame machine right outside the shop. During this time, it's clear to see how isolated Diego must feel. These minigames are meant to be played with friends, yet he's alone. Moving forward, Diego notes the disappointing number of credits he's received. He then walks towards the next minigame machine. He plays for a couple moments, and then tells the audience his thoughts on the minigames. Diego then mentions that he isn't sure how to progress through the level. He promptly ends the video, telling the audience he'll pick up when he left off, and figure out how to move forward. The game is starting to feel unfamiliar to me. I already had a few clear memories of this, and it seems the more I play, the more confused I get. It feels like a distant feeling, a familiar one, but one that keeps getting away from me, the more I try to grasp it. The next video opens with a loud buzzing noise. Soon after, something takes control of Diego's mouse, its movements seeming unorthodox. After using the mega increase bought earlier, the number begins to rise, as the buzzing seems to subside for now. Throughout the whole ordeal, Diego remains silent, almost as if he was petrified. A sound effect begins to play, as we see a vase broken on the ground, almost as if it had been tipped over. Within this broken vase, we can see a yellow key, and if my theory is to be correct, the letter within it could be an I. The description of the key is quite ominous. For now, we don't have anything to base this off, so let's keep this in the back of our minds. Diego decides that his next video will be an exploration into the yellow door, and as he's about to end the video, he notices the disorientation of the living room. Something odd is going on here. It appears that Diego knows about as much as we do, but I don't believe that. Our next video begins with Diego standing outside the mouse hole from the previous videos. He mentions that he wishes to buy the remaining items in the shop in case of an emergency. However, as Diego begins to make his way towards the shop, something unordinary happens.
What the
A player with a broken bot model seems to interact with him. Hello, how are you? Remember how many of us used to live here? Does this feel real to you? It was bound to happen. The power we had, the influence we had on this place. It's gone now. but it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. We don't belong here. Not anymore. But you have to do it. You have to open it. We can't change that, sadly. You'll know when. Do you remember that urban legend? Everybody was talking about it back then. This is familiar, right? Being lost, not knowing what to do. You're used to it by now. It's gonna be hard, but this is something you have to do on your own. I don't have much time. And pay attention to the numbers. You know what happens. I have to go now. Please don't be scared. We both know how strong you are. Check under the kitchen table. As the broken bot begins to walk away, Diego starts to chase after it, hoping to talk more with it. Once the broken bot reaches the purple door, he disappears. Diego begins to feel defeated and unsure of what to do as of now. Diego makes his way to the kitchen, where, once he's inside, he finds a red key with a G in the middle, along with a pair of scissors. The description of the key reads, "Some things are meant to happen, no matter what." And for the scissors, are you still scared of this color? I know, there are some things we never get used to. This is going to come up in the analysis section, so I'll save my theories on this for later. Diego walks around the kitchen for a bit, and then ends the video, sounding heavily disappointed. The next video begins with the character select screen. The atmosphere feels almost gloomy, and the color of Diego's previous robot is now the same shade of blue as that bot from the last episode. He then apologizes for the lack of uploads. He says it's mostly due to his mental well-being. He hasn't exactly been feeling well since the last episode. Regardless, Diego chooses a different path for this recording, opting to play on his older character rather than his newer one. Loading into this level, we can see a split room of red and blue, possibly representing the dichotomy of flesh and machine. Additionally, we can see a drawn house in the middle of the frame, again being split between a hand-drawn red and a mechanically drawn blue. Diego begins to walk around the room, expressing his discomfort with how much his memories seem to differ with what he's looking at. After being discouraged by his surroundings, he opens his book to find some solace in the past. He finds a multitude of screenshots but doesn't seem to remember any of them. In doing so, we also come across the final message given to the community before its inevitable shutdown. Dear robots, it may come as a surprise to some of you, but I have come to the decision to permanently close the doors of this once beautiful house. I have to thank those of you who worked hard to keep this place alive. All of you fought very hard, and I have to commend you for that. The event that caused all of this couldn't have been predicted, so no one is at fault here. Trust me, ultimately, this is the best decision for everyone. This game isn't what it used to be. It will never be. We can't change what has already happened, but we can keep those memories in our hearts and move on. It will do us no good to try and fight for something that's already lost. Thank you for being the best community I could have ever asked for. Thank you for keeping this house up and running as long as it did. Thank you for the love and support. Thank you, the creator. After looking through a couple of screenshots, there's one screenshot in particular that we should take note of. Dated January 9th of 2007, the caption reads, "The Temple's Door." Diego mentions how this is the original living room area, and that the door on top of this structure was some sort of urban legend within the Teeny Toys community. The only question being, what's behind this elusive door? Diego himself has no idea, despite him being a veteran. He begins to investigate the friends list, with Sleepy Queen 1598 having an odd bio. Not all dreams are meant to come true, especially in this godforsaken place. Why is this even happening? Seemingly referencing the shutdown. Dark Hex Celtic references the urban legend, claiming that he saw what's inside, though there's no explanation of what's inside nor any evidence of it being true. Diego looks at the world map to try and get some answers on where to go next, but it's a jumbled mess of "you are here" signs everywhere. This situation seems to vex Diego. His memories of this long-forgotten land are gone. He mentions how alone he feels, how desperate he is to understand the emotions he once felt, surrounded by the people he once loved, but he can't anymore.
But it's so weird because it feels like this part of the game is totally different. It's really sad because why can't I remember those times?
Diego decides to use the scissors on his new account, as that's what one of the screenshots told him to do. Once he does so, he moves over to this minigame machine in order to play tic-tac-toe with himself. He loses. Afterwards, The room begins to change before him. The video abruptly concludes. The next video begins with Diego standing before the tower with a wavering voice. After walking around for a bit, Diego moves towards the yellow door, which appears to be the bathroom level. Diego notices the serenity of the room, being devoid of music. He also mentions the apprehension he feels when trying to play the game. He doesn't want to destroy his memories of the game. After a bit of hesitation, he begins to play the yellow minigame machine, which appears to be a game of slots. Something to take note of here is the symbols used within the slot machine. It's clearly referencing different types of physical deterioration: low energy, insomnia, death. Moving forward, Diego realizes that he must use the mega discharge in order to shake the room. Once he does so, he makes his way towards the living room and sees the disrepair he's caused. Interestingly though, he's able to make his way to the door. Once inside, this pulsating mass within the middle of the room can be heard. Cords can be seen stretching throughout the structure, almost like veins. Something interesting to take note of is the colors, blue and orange, the same colors as Diego, his past and present. Moving forward, Diego jumps his way down the steps of the tower. At the bottom, we can see the words enharmonic, cage, reawoken, and web. After wandering around for a bit, Diego comes across a blue book within a boiler of some sort. Interacting with this strange book, Diego looks down a long, dark corridor, surrounded by characters with a similar color scheme to his. Ominous music plays in the background as we come across a picture of a car, along with a page that reads the following: The Village in the Cloud. Once upon a time, there was a village where everybody was happy and each person had an important task. One day, the villagers began to disappear due to a mysterious cloud. The villagers tried to make it go away, but couldn't do it. This fairy tale teaches us that not all happens is fair or makes sense. Diego is then seen back at the temple with a new addition to his character, a radar. Our next video begins where we left off. Diego is directly outside the temple door, and he notices the odd movement given to his radar. It soon dawns on him that the radar is pointing to something. After this realization, Diego ventures off to find the source of this signal. Once he does so, a door seems to appear. Diego is transported into a place that is drastically different from any area we've been used to, at least stylistically. After looking at his surroundings for a moment, Diego notices the white paper-like object in the room and moves towards it. The food stinks here, and it's always the same. Yesterday I tried to hide so they couldn't find me. It didn't work. I hate it. I can't sleep. I close my eyes and pretend so she can rest a bit. The other day I heard her cry. It made me sad. It's not my fault we're here. This chair is very uncomfortable. She sleeps here. At least she tries to. I think she's trying to be strong for me. I like it here. I can try and forget where I really am. I miss him. I know, sweetie. It's all my fault. Diego proceeds to look around, finding some childlike art on the walls. We see the names Rebecca, Luigi, Julia, and Paolo. Suddenly, Diego is teleported into a dark hallway leading towards a door. As he walks towards it, the door becomes lighter in color, as well as a dark rumbling sound beginning to be heard. After walking through, Diego falls from the ceiling as the pink key lies before him, ending the video. Our next video begins with yet another introduction from Diego, although a depressing one at that. The trees from his screenshots are reappearing. What this means as of now is unclear, but moving past this, we can see Diego move towards the pink door. Once inside, Diego immediately notices his radar is pointing at something. Once he makes his way towards this anomaly, a door with a large model of his own head seems to appear. Without any hesitation, he enters and is transported to a strange area we've never seen before. This first area he walks towards seems to be a table with drawings floating around it. Diego enters the seat on the right and begins to talk with this strange entity. Hello there, how you doing? You can talk to me. Don't be scared, please. I understand it can be quite overwhelming to deal with everything all at once. Let me show you something. This little tank here is super good at destroying stuff. Usually he destroys the bad guys, but now he's gone crazy and decided to destroy everything. So this is our portal. We use it to open doors to another dimension. Let me show you something. This little tank here is super good at destroying stuff. Usually he destroys the bad guys, but now he's gone crazy and decided to destroy everything. So this is our portal. We use it to open doors to another dimension. this dimension, there are lots of robots that help with the situation. What do you think? Diego exits his seat and begins to make his way down the hall as the entity instructed. Once doing so, we see a strange model that seems to be missing an arm. Diego walks past this oddity and begins to walk towards another hallway and makes his way to a dinner table. He finds an empty seat and sits down. Oh, it's you. Look, they forced me to invite you because of what happened to you. It's tragic, yes, but I couldn't care less, honestly. I never liked you, and this doesn't change it. Especially because now I'm forced to invite you to my party, and people think I'm friends with a weirdo. Diego begins to sob instinctively from this dialogue, however odd it may seem. It's becoming more and more clear Diego's connection to this game. He walks back through the hallway and comes across a similar model from before. However, this one seems to be missing his leg. Diego comes across multiple different types of imagery on his way through this next hallway, coming across what seems to be a robot hanging itself, another being what looks like a classroom of sorts. Diego, once again, finds a chair and sits down. Welcome back, how are you? We missed you. Right, kids? I know you missed a lot, but don't worry, you're gonna catch up in no time. Today I want you kids to write a story of your own. It must have a final message that teaches you something. So please, think about what you write, give it a title, and draw something. Diego then makes his way back through the hallway from before, where yet another model is seen, this one missing his left arm. At the end of the final hallway, he finds a figure, which seems to be unassuming as of now, but I have reason to believe that it represents his mother or something related to her. We also see multiple distorted-looking robots as Diego begins to interact with this large figure. Our family is cursed, I swear. I can't believe all this would happen to us. I don't know what to do. Oh, hey sweetie, I was on the phone with Grandma. Don't worry, it's nothing. Diego then comes across the fourth and last model, which appears to be missing his leg. We can also see what seems to be the pulsating mass from episode 8. After walking through the object, Diego is transported to the kitchen. However, it seems very different, appearing almost identical to the screenshots he took of it years prior. Diego moves into the bathroom where he can once again see his radar pointing to something. Approaching this anomaly presents us with a Halloween-themed door. Entering the door, Diego seems to be teleported to a living room of sorts. He wanders around for a bit and finds what looks like Carl from the first episode. He then begins to interact with his computer. Once doing so, we can see it boot up, and his voice seems to waver with fear. Once in, he clicks the wardrobe, where we can see some horrifying imagery. After that spectacle, Diego opens his mail, which seems to be filled with either hate emails or arbitrary nonsense. One of those emails, however, seems very important to Diego, as he begins to cry from just reading it. Hello. I know you're not feeling well, so I decided to send you a mail. I'm a bit sad about the current state of the game. I play this game a lot, but it's not like how it used to be. And it's becoming kinda hard to keep the house functional, at least for me. So I thought it would be cool to have a meetup with the others to show that we don't give up. I asked them to dress like that music video I told you about the other day so we can have a fun time. I hope this will show everyone that people still care about this game. We will meet next Wednesday at the usual time. Close your heart 111. After browsing through emails for a bit, Diego comes across a wallpaper folder, where he finds a couple pieces of strange imagery, along with a message calling out to Diego directly. Diego, I'm sorry. You will have to use the scissors again. I understand this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I can't find another way. I wish I did, because you will soon see all the horrible things I've done to you and the others. I'm not proud of my actions, but to me, they were the only solution. A solution to a problem that I created, because I couldn't let this game go. I tried to fix everything, but it didn't work, so now everyone is suffering because of me, especially you. It's my fault. I take full responsibility. All I can say is that I'm sorry. It's fine if you don't forgive me. I'm waiting for you. Diego presses quit, possibly out of annoyance and despair. Once he does so, he's transported to the bathroom. However, it's also seemingly being repaired, if you could call it that. Diego wanders the bathroom for a bit, before leaving into the living room. Once inside, he begins to walk over to the purple door, the same purple door that the broken robot had left through in episode 6. Diego walks through the door and is met by the same atmosphere we saw in the previous episode, only this time, he's using the orange bod. The room is no longer red and blue, but purple and violet. The house in the middle being disheveled and broken. Diego says he has the confirmation he needed. He realizes that the game is connected to his real life, and that the lion story from before was an allegory for himself. Diego realizes that it's time to use the scissors, however terrifying it may be for him. However, out of nowhere, the doors in the living room, all doors, begin to open. Diego walks through the green door and is met with a strange hallway that wasn't discoverable beforehand. He finds a camera system, seemingly hidden within the walls of the server. Terrified, he returns to the player select screen, and the video ends. The next episode is our longest video yet. We meet Diego back in the purple room from the last episode. Diego mentions that he finally feels as if this game is about his personal growth, and how everything in it has been a journey for him. He begins to make his way through the red door. Once inside, he feels as if he's lost, in a sense. He mentions how exploring rooms feels like a mental chore for him. Diego once again notices the antenna that is guiding him towards a new section of the game. He comes across a large structure with a white door. Once again, he feels the need to enter. Once he does so, we see a message from who we can presume is the creator of the Teeny Toys server. When I created the minigames, I wanted to capture the essence of Teeny Toys. Minigames were something I always loved about this game, and in my head, they had to be a part of this in some way. However, they ended up being just a reflection of what you had to endure because of your condition. We then see what looks like a voodoo doll and a bot walking around a strange area we've never seen before. The teal bot seems to interact with something, and once it does, we see a text box pop up, along with what looks to be a strange amalgamation, or more accurately, a cancer cell. More on that later. Once the conversation is over, we see a long hallway with Diego at the end of it. Once inside, he comes across what looks like a thermometer, and the entity begins to speak once more. You just finished a conversation with someone, and aren't sure what it was about. Despite knowing you'll see him in a few hours, you feel the need to call him. A large silhouette comes into frame, and as Diego begins to move his character, we can see a sprite of a man playing a piano. I have reason to believe that this man is Diego's father. After the entity begins to give us more exposition, we then come across what looks to be an amalgam of different items all squished into one. Its presence is ominous and foreboding. You can't deal with this world anymore. Everyone has died, and all the robots have disappeared. That's what you thought. But if everyone has disappeared, then why are you still here, alone in this place? It's driving you crazy. We then load into an RPG aesthetic. You see someone inside the car, standing still, a wrapped gift on the dashboard. You feel a sudden urge building inside of you. He needs to get out. You smash your fist against the window, trying to break it. You do it over and over again until your hand is crushed. You keep screaming his name and pounding on the glass. No matter how hard you punch, the glass doesn't budge. Diego begins to move away from this character. He seems to be confused or frightened almost. He then moves towards the truck and interacts with it, causing it to speed off. We're then transported back into the bedroom section of the main Teeny Toys game. Diego is clearly disturbed by these interactions and begins to use the scissors for a second time. He then receives his antenna as a final item, and if we put the different keys together, they spell Diego. The description of the blue key reads, everything you experience had to happen. Everything you are experiencing has to happen. It may seem pointless, but it's not. I promise. You always had the key within you. Diego moves towards the blue door, and once opened, we see a blue room with a repetitive design of purely suns. After walking around for a bit, Diego walks towards a signal that was given off by the radar, and he walks through yet another white door. Similarly to the last time Diego was transported, we receive a message from the presumed creator. This is my best attempt at recreating what you experienced when you were at the hospital. It's been many years since it happened, and you pretty much removed everything from around that year. But the emotions of these memories are still there, and I used them to recreate this. Once Diego's able to walk around, we meet a young girl who appears to be dancing. Diego interacts with this character, and dialogue begins to play. It appears that this young girl is Rebecca, whose name was foreshadowed in episode 9. They begin to make each other's acquaintance. Diego comes off as anxious and embarrassed, however Rebecca is charming and bubbly. Once the dialogue concludes, Diego becomes aware of his surroundings, which seem to be a recreation of the hospital setting we saw in episode 9 as well. He walks around and meets another friend, Luigi, characterized by his long dark hair in pursuit of knowledge. Diego then walks up to a blonde individual. They appear to be playing what looks to be an NES. This character is named Julia, yet another character we've heard of previously. She invites Diego to play a game with her, in which he feels much obliged to do so. The game appears to be an 8-bit recreation of the Teeny Toys we've been playing so far, however in a much different fashion. Within the game, we come across different sprites that continue to build human limbs. Diego is then released from the game, and afterwards, he leaves the area to explore. He comes across another individual, a long brown-haired boy named Paolo, who seems to be sorting the drawings by color. He gives Diego the cards he took from Luigi, so he can give them back. Diego returns the cards to Luigi and makes his way back to Rebecca, who affirms to Diego that all of the children are friendly people, despite his apprehension. They all take a picture together, making their friendship official. We then cut to a scene which depicts Rebecca seemingly running somewhere as Diego follows her. She stops at a window to watch the sunset, as Diego sits beside her. They both admire the beauty of the sunset. She then tells Diego that it reminds her that even though she's in the hospital, there's still things to be grateful for. I highly recommend going to watch this scene for yourself, as I'll never be able to give it the emotional response it deserves. This scene is absolutely beautiful, and it deserves the justice of watching it undocumented. Diego's character begins to look around as final shots of the server are shown to us, the new and old overlapping with each other. Diego mentions that his memory seems to be coming back in some way. The reason he didn't want Rebecca to die was because Diego himself didn't. A survivor's guilt, if you will. Diego then begins to express his regrets that he had. He feels remorse for cutting contact with her after he left the hospital. And with that, Teeny Toy's exploration has come to its final close, although with more stated to come. In order to understand the story and finally analyze the series, I believe it's important to understand our characters and their motivations before we go headfirst into the analysis. Diego, a young male who was hospitalized, seems to discover an abandoned server. At first, his experiences seem to mirror that of an urban exploration. However, we soon find out that his mind and the game seem to have melded in some way, producing memories long forgotten, or rather, repressed. He originally played Teeny Toys as a child, or at least some version of it. It's my current belief that the Teeny Toys MMO was originally created for a group of hospitalized children, or at least it was popular among that group, Diego being a part of it. One of those players happened to be Diego's best friend, who possibly is terminally ill, Rebecca. Her fate is left unknown to both the audience and Diego. This seems to be deeply traumatic for Diego, as he repressed this memory deep within his psyche. The creator, whoever it may be, discontinued the game, seemingly at random, to the dismay of many players. Diego's parents also seem to be in the picture, at least his mother is. From what I understand, Diego might have lost his father in a fatal car crash. However, that part's mainly unconfirmed. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's analyze. When it comes to the nature of the Teeny Toys MMO, it's important to understand what it means for the characters. I've seen people throw around the idea of an omniscient god or malevolent AI, but in all honesty, that isn't what matters here. We aren't here to complicate the inner machinations of the game. No, that would undermine all the therapeutic efforts Diego had made for himself. Our story is about Diego, not the game. Regardless of that, the game does play an important role in understanding and learning more about Diego. Like in the beginning, we can understand that he prefers keeping to himself and playing video games more than interacting with others. Similarly, Diego finds the server to be isolating without anyone to play minigames with. That feeling of loneliness is much more profound than we realize. Furthermore, it's that same loneliness that Diego feels that drives the game to be a sort of therapist to him, using his past memories and selves in order to drive home this new perspective to him. Additionally, I believe it's important to highlight the significance of color throughout the series. Diego's current robot is a traditional orange hue. Meanwhile, his original robot seems to be a light blue. At first, it might seem unimportant, but as we dive deeper into the series, blue seems to be more associated with Diego's past, and orange seems to be more associated with not only the present, but his inability to remember. What these colors represent in a larger sense is likely more mundane than you might think. Blue is often associated with hospital linens and loneliness, concepts that appear quite frequently within the story. I think in the context of Teeny Toys, the MMO itself is likely an allegory for death in some way. That visceral feeling deep inside that at any moment, anyone you know and love can just disappear from your life without warning. It's disheartening, and moreover, it can break you at points. In Diego's case, revisiting that grief could lead to discoveries long forgotten. In relation to those discoveries, Diego seems to uncover his repressed traumatic memories. We know that Diego was originally hospitalized with a disease that possibly led the doctors to amputate one or more of his limbs. We also know that when he was in the hospital, he was part of a group of children that had similar non-contagious diseases. My current belief is that Diego had a variant of cancer, possibly bone cancer or some kind of sarcoma, which led to the inevitable amputation of his limb. This is evident by the recurring motif of disembodied limbs, along with the constant reminder of using the scissors in order to progress, mirroring the healing process of cancer by way of amputation. The 11th episode provides more evidence to this theory. One of the first visuals we see in Diego's flashbacks appear to be a young child that's gone through multiple rounds of chemotherapy. Similarly, the sprite for the creator seems to mirror that of the anatomy of a cancer cell. Moving back to Diego, however, we know that he inevitably leaves the hospital with some kind of trauma, and that trauma itself isn't exactly stated, but I think it might have something to do with Rebecca, his childhood friend, whose fate was left ambiguous. It's clear that Rebecca was a source of hope and happiness for Diego, and even in her final moments, she reassured Diego that she would leave the world a happier place than when she found it. One of the biggest mysteries regarding the series is the nature of the blue bot from episode 6. Keeping with the motif of blue connecting to the past, it's entirely possible that this blue robot is Diego's past self. This isn't a case of time travel or anything, it's possibly more symbolic. The lines, "Remember how many of us used to live here?" and "We don't belong here, not anymore," seem to reference the idea of dissonance within oneself. Similarly, within episode 8, we can see the words on the wall using that same blue hue. They also seem to reference the same idea. The definition of enharmonic is two notes bearing the same tone, but having different names. For example, on a keyboard, this is F sharp, and G flat. Both are the same tone, but different notes. Using this to analyze the two bots, we can see that it's possible that these two characters are the same people, but different in some other way. My guess is being that the past version of this Diego had the foresight of the present Diego. This is evidenced by the line, "This is familiar, right? Being lost, not knowing what to do. You're used to it by now." So how exactly does this fit into the divide itself? Well, not only can we see that Diego is divided into two different beings of himself, we can also see that he feels divided among himself as a person. Diego has been dealing with his trauma in unhealthy ways, pushing it down and forgetting it instead of growing and healing, and I think the game knows this too. The Teeny Toys MMO seems to understand this division and replicates it through the broken robot seen in episode 6. Not only that, but it understands his trauma and works hard to try and force him to deal with it. Diego is a complicated individual. He's made mistakes and he's hurt people he loves, but through all of that, he's understood that he needs to see his trauma and understand it in order to finally heal. And that's what I think the true message of Teeny Toys might be. To overcome and heal from trauma, we must face it ourselves. Teeny Toys gave us insight into the healing process of trauma, using the motif of the loneliness of a dead MMO. Our next series, however, explores the philosophy of sentience, using the nostalgia of old Gmod machinimas. Ever since the inception of Valve, there's always been an air of unease surrounding the different games within the Source engine. Some people refer to it as canopsia, that eerie feeling of emptiness where there were once people, almost appearing as if the locations created by the source engine are eerie due to their transitional nature. However, I'd like to think it's something more than that. The way that ragdolls seem to bleed when hurt, or the eerie stories behind many of the textures within source games, there's always been something strange about it. On May 13th of 2021, a channel was created with the minimalist description of "I make Gmod videos and Badwater is my favorite map." Assumedly, this channel seems to be re-uploads of an old Gmod machinima channel from back in 2009. Looking at the first video, however, it presents us with an odd introduction to this channel. Labeled TF2 Sawmill Gameplay, we follow the point of view of a Red Scout. He leaves his spawn point and runs across a sawmill map, coming across what seems to be a Gmod player character setting up for a new machinima. Our Red Scout leaves the scene. However, for a moment we can hear his screams as he's pulled by something, possibly that player character we saw earlier. It's important to keep in mind the characters that we come across throughout the series, specifically this Red Scout and the player character. Our next video seems to be the machinima that we saw being set up in the last video. The most notable thing about this episode is the Red Scout from the last video seemingly being used as one of the main characters in this machinima. It appears as if he's been caught, and the player is using him. Our next video, Half-Life 2, August 15th of 2009, picks up right where we left off. However, once again, from the point of view of this Red Scout. We see the Red Scout look to his left for a moment, and then he looks down to his hand. He notices that it's been welded to the couch, although he does seem to break loose. Looking back to the heavy, it appears as if he's shaking his head in disapproval before being removed by the player. As for the Red Scout, well, his fate is left ambiguous. Melon Man to the rescue seems to be yet another generic Gmod machinima featuring a red engineer being ambushed by a group of blue TF2 characters. Suddenly, a character named Melon Man, who appears to be a demo man with a melon for a head, comes to rescue our red engineer. Interestingly, Melon Man's character suggests that he's a living experiment of Badwater's making, a man whose face was replaced by a melon. It seems to mirror the motif of powerlessness. Right before the video ends, we can see a blue scout dragging himself across the tracks as our player character runs up to him, abruptly ending the video. Similarly to our last episode, Melon Man vs. the Teethaneer appears to be another machinima. However, this machinima presents us with a horrid abomination. The Teethaneer, a blue engineer whose face has been contorted into a dark manifestation of what it once was. On the surface it might not seem frightening, but knowing the context, this is deeply disturbing. This player character either realizes the sentience of these characters and torments them for his own pleasure, or is unknowingly torturing innocent souls. Once again, right before the video ends, we see Melon Man take on a more fluid animation, as our player character holds a gun to his head. This seems to prove the suspicion that BadwaterVideos2009 is aware of the sentience within these characters, and is actively using them against their will. Numbers. The first thing we seem to hear is a set of numbers, even before we're able to see what the environment is. It appears that the Red Scout survived his encounter with the player. The Red Scout peers around their environment for a bit, checking out the radio, spilling out what appears to be random numbers, then looking to another ragdoll who appears to be unconscious. Soon after, the Red Scout finds a door that appears to lead to nowhere, but once opened, we can see a large white void. Suddenly, the radio begins to say the numbers 82, 85, and 78. Once inside, he appears to be lost, as the video and audio cut out. Let's get back to those numbers. At first they might seem random, but after doing a little problem solving, they appear to be ASCII values as 16-bit decimal. Decoding the first message reads as such: "You must hide," implying a more sinister side to our player character. The second message reads, "Run." Presumably this is a warning to the Red Scout. That part is understandable. But what is this white void? And what is the fate of our Red Scout now? This video overall seems to provide more questions than answers. Moving forward, the next machinima seems to house a new character, Dr. Metalhead. However, the horror comes in the implication of these characters. The torture, the mutilation, it's horrific. BadWaterVideos would stop uploading for about a month after this. However, they would come back with a bombshell of a video. On July 31st of 2021, our player seems to upload a Q&A for a new Melon Man video. Most of the questions seem to be arbitrary. Some even include references to Gunslinger Pro 2009, a similar yet narratively different channel to BadWaterVideos. However, something strange seems to happen towards the end, a technical issue if you will, regarding the new episode's hiatus. The player would soon upload a video tutorial on how to make Gmod machinimas. The first being that this character seems to access the white void. Not only that, but they seem to be unaware of the abnormalities within his game. The way they talk about the characters almost seems to imply that the player believes that these are normally how the ragdolls act, almost as if they were programmed to do the things that they do. Another oddity that we can notice is that the player seemingly caught the Red Scout once again, though there is no mention of where this may have happened. As the player begins to show the audience how to make a ragdoll walker, they soon turn back to find the Red Scout completely gone, replacing him with the Red Engineer. Our next video is a combination of the work seen from the last video and the announcement from the previous videos. We pick up with the story of Melon Man. Some odd moments we can notice are the little bits of sentience shown around the 40-second mark. The Teethaneer moves on his own for a bit, before the shadow of the player can be seen to mock him, or worse, threaten the character. Our next video serves as an explanation for what happened to the Red Scout. Once again, we see this white void. As the scout notices the player taking one of the ragdolls to a specific area, the scout tries to get the attention of the Red Engineer, but he appears to be unable to move, or perhaps unconscious. As soon as he senses some kind of danger, he gets pulled by the player and blacks out. Once conscious, we see the point of view of the Red Scout during the tutorial video. Something interesting I'd like to note about this video is the use of the dark room. Usually when a horror project utilizes the dark room from GM Construct, it usually gives the audience a sense of unease, or rather, a place to be afraid of. Like the title suggests, this idea is turned on its head. This is a place of sanctuary for the scout. It's a safe space. Our next video seems to be a sort of setup video for Melon Man. Not much to write home about. With that out of the way, let's pick back up with our Red Scout. It appears he's been woken up near a light, which he then uses to make his way around the room. Items being scattered around the room almost as if someone frantically threw everything around. A bit further in, and he comes across a wrench, the same wrench that was in the broken TV machinima. The video begins to malfunction, right before its conclusion. Somewhere in between the previous episode and this new episode, the Red Scout got his hands on what looks to be a remover tool. How this happened, we don't know. It's never explained to us, but what we know now is that the Red Scout has a fraction of the power of God. The episode begins to malfunction, and as the video becomes more coherent, we see our Red Scout inspecting something. Once doing so, he notices something in the darkness. Our player is watching. Now trapped within the dark room, with no way of escape, our player comes into frame, the darkness shrouding his face with an ominous aura. He punishes the scout for not obeying him, breaking his fingers, and torturing him. A final frame of the player is shown to us, the light emanating from above. He stares deep into our soul, watching, waiting. It's back to work for our player, creating the next big hit for all to see. The Teethaneer is once again causing trouble for none other than the Red Scout. It appears he's being used for content yet again, although I'm not exactly sure this is the same Red Scout. The final shots of this video seem to set up a final showdown between Dr. Metalhead and Melon Man. Our next video, however, seems to be a recap of what the Red Scout has gone through in order to get where we are now. Walking out of the GM construct into the dark room once again, this new Red Scout comes across an amalgam of what appears to be different characters, contorted and combined into some sick creature. He pleads for death, agonizing. In a moment of mercy, the Red Scout uses the remover tool to give this coalescence a sense of peace. It's entirely possible that the amalgam we saw was the original Red Scout, and this new one is something that the player spawned in after our old scout was deemed a failure. Our new Red Scout seems to have been killed thousands upon thousands of times, being tortured for the player's amusement. As the player character is watching into the distance, he begins to talk to the Red Scout. It will never be enough. No matter how much you suffer, it will never be enough. I'm not gonna let you take this away from me. Thousands of lives taken for the amusement and enjoyment of our player character. Interestingly enough, the dialogue of this player seems to call into question the reasoning behind this punishment. From the outside looking in, we could infer that it's just pure sadism. However, it seems that the Red Scout may have done something more to deserve this. But as of right now, this appears to be the last video, bringing the story to a halt. The story of BadWaterVideos2009 is relatively simple. However, the way it's presented to the audience can be seen as downright morbid. Before we do any type of analysis, let's try and piece together a cohesive story. A player character discovers an anomaly within his game. It appears to the audience that he has no recognition of this being an anomaly. As far as we know, the player character sees the living ragdolls as part of the game's code. Moreover, he seems to have access to this strange white void that appears to walk between the different maps of TF2. For example, we see different characters being used in GM Construct, which likely means that this white void is being used as a link between different source games. Notably, we see a Red Scout who inevitably becomes the tortured individual of the group, mainly because rather than being a slave to the player's constant will, he attempts to escape the player's grasp. On his first attempt, he succeeds, as the player character seems to be afraid of the dark room, possibly indicating a sort of younger nature to this player. However, that sanctity is soon cut short by the player, as he begins to torture this scout, leaving him alive, however, to continue to experiment with him, assumably using him for a future Melon Man video. In the meantime, a new Red Scout has been spawned in for our player character, using him for the new Melon Man machinimas, while the older one is being tortured. This new scout discovers the tortured scout, and in a moment of desperation and mercy, he puts it out of its misery, using a remover tool that was originally discovered by the old scout. Once the player discovers this, he begins to murder this Red Scout over and over again, but it'll never be enough. The main concepts within BadWaterVideos2009 are the ideas of sentience within oneself and others, as well as the ethics behind this. This is evident by the continuous morbidity of death within this Red Scout. As outsiders, we know that this is inherently wrong. Despite that, we can see the player constantly torture and kill the Red Scout. While this may be seen as inherently wrong, as I stated earlier, there are hundreds if not thousands of ragdoll torture maps. Do you ever wonder if those ragdolls were ever aware of the torture? Or worse, they were sentient enough to feel it? It's a horrifying concept. Hundreds of thousands if not millions of ragdolls mistreated and tortured for the sake of a simple YouTube animation. This is the reality of BadWaterVideos2009. So how exactly does this fit into the divide itself? At first, it's likely not as clear as you might think. However, within the divide itself, R.D. Laing brings up the idea of sentience quite often, usually explaining the idea of division within sentience itself. For example, within BadWaterVideos2009, we can see that the Red Scout is clearly divided into thousands of different scouts. Notably, this sentience doesn't just stop at the Red Scout. We can see the hesitation within Melon Man, the fear from the Heavy within the early parts of the series. Every ragdoll shows some fragment of sentience. This idea of sentient beings being tortured by a supposed god is not something new, most famously within the story of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a story about a malevolent artificial intelligence creating a living hell for a specific set of humans, in order to portray his hatred in a way that is palpable. Sound familiar? It's almost exactly what we're seeing within the series. A malevolent player acts as god for these ragdolls, torturing those who stray from his gaze. Since I've already discussed how these different series explore the idea of division in their own unique ways, this section is more of a cross-analysis, a way to view the different ideas of division in a much different lens, and more importantly to this video, explore the larger themes of the different web series. We'll start by splitting this section into 3 different chapters. One discussing the division of sentience, one discussing the division of synthesis, and most importantly, one discussing the division of the human psyche. With all that out of the way, let's discuss. The division of sentience has been seen and discussed in multiple different ways throughout this video. However, let's try and decompile this idea in different perspectives. The sentience of Mr. I and the other characters within AI builds are much different than the sentience of the ragdolls within BadWaterVideos2009. This is mainly due to the idea that the characters within AI builds are thoughts and feelings of Nicholas, not their own individuals. They're not only a part of him and divided among him, but they are him. The characters of AI builds are created from the thoughts and feelings of the main character. They're not sentient beings in the traditional sense. They don't exactly think for themselves, as they are created from Nicholas's thoughts and experiences. Meanwhile, within BadWaterVideos2009, we can see these ragdolls come to life, possibly from some sort of emergent AI or learning algorithm. Regardless of how they become sentient, these individuals feel pain and want to escape from it. This is the traditional idea of sentience, and what inevitably causes the division within the series. Dividing these ragdolls into multiple personalities, not within oneself but outside of oneself. Similarly, we can see this idea within Summon House. The generative AI within the game begins to build its own personalities from the different summons and interpretations of the player. The ghost in the machine being characterized by the branching personality outside of oneself. The only series that doesn't exactly fit into this idea is Teeny Toy's Exploration, whose sentience comes in the form of a separate entity created from his past trauma. While you might see this as exactly what we see in AI builds, it's a bit more complex than that. Diego is divided into his present and past self. Meanwhile, his past self in this scenario seems to have a sort of foresight of his present self, and while this might be interpreted as a sort of supernatural event, it's likely that the creator is just trying to reach out to Diego in a form that is both familiar and one that will serve as the sparks needed to explore his repressed trauma. The division of synthesis might sound like a contradiction to the ideas being presented so far. However, it isn't about the division becoming one again. Rather, it's more so about the psyche of the different characters seemingly melding with the digital world. The most obvious form of this synthesis being within AI builds. A character's subconscious is presenting itself through the different personas of the series, Mr. I being one of the most prominent examples of this. Nicholas is being divided into himself and his darkest thoughts through the medium of this game. This isn't the only series to utilize this, however. Teeny Toy's Exploration uses this as well, however in a much different fashion. The entire narrative surrounding Teeny Toys revolves around the idea of Diego discovering his past through the medium of a digital machine, his past memories long forgotten, are shown to him, not because he's remembering his past, but because the game and his psyche have melded into one. And I think Badwater Videos utilizes this idea in a very unique way. The divided individuals are literally a part of the game. They may be sentient artificial intelligences, but that shouldn't matter in a broader sense of the synthesis aspect. The division of Psyche is likely the most important aspect of this video, and overall for these web series that we're analyzing. First, let's start with understanding why the psyche of the different characters can be seen as divided. Nicholas, within the series and even before the series, suffered from depression, which led to the game being divided into multiple different characters. This isn't anything new for us, as we've discussed this in full. However, this division of psyche is most prevalent within Mr. I, being the deepest parts of his subconscious. This can give us a new avenue of exploration when trying to understand Nicholas. Mr. I himself is somewhat of an unreliable narrator. He isn't telling us things that are true about Nicholas, rather he's telling the audience things that Nicholas believes are true. Telling him that everyone hates Nicholas, his mother, his brother, and his late father. Not only that, but he tells Nicholas that he should end his own life, revealing to us that Nicholas has been dealing with suicidal ideation for some time now. Teeny Toys also shows the audience this division of psyche in a really similar manner. We've talked about the division within Teeny Toys extensively. However, if we use his memories as another avenue to peer into his psyche, we can uncover the true division of psyche within Diego. From what I can understand, the trauma that Diego endured was so deep and personal to him that it was repressed into his subconscious, which was then picked up by the creator of Teeny Toys and presented within the game. It's entirely possible that this game itself is a sort of subsection within Diego, dividing his psyche into multiple different aspects of the game. His blue robot being his repressed subconscious, the different rooms representing a different part of himself, and most importantly, the visualization of his memories within the game. Both of the series we just discussed utilized a specific trait from the psyche of their main character, inevitably giving it life in a sense. While the division of psyche is often seen as arbitrary to many viewers, I'd argue that it plays the most important role in the digital horror of the present. Giving audiences a perspective from which we can philosophically infer new things about the characters is something that can only be done perfectly or not at all. It's truly unique when a series can present the psychological aspects of characters, not through the characters themselves, but through an outside perspective of sorts. Your words, your actions, your thoughts, they all eventually lead back to the division of the human psyche. Real quick here, I just want to thank everybody for watching. You know, this video took a long time to make and it wasn't easy. I had a lot of help along the way, mainly from friends and other people who really deserve some credit. Most notably, I'd like to thank Lando for giving me some help and advice, especially when writing this video. He really gave me a good insight on how to improve my work. I'd also like to thank Sagan Hogs for giving me the inspiration to make this video. Without him, I definitely wouldn't have been putting this out at all. A lot of the concepts within this video come from ideas that he's presented within his videos, and without him, this really wouldn't have happened, so I'd like to give him a huge thank you. All of the music that I used within this video will be in the description. Also, any original music will also be there. You are free to use my music however you see fit. I always love seeing how people can create new things with stuff that I've already made. If you guys would like to support any endeavors by me, I would greatly appreciate it by sending a donation via my Patreon. Even if you can't, just subscribing and liking would do just as fine. Thank you all so much for watching. And with that, I'll say goodbye.